Good afternoon, everybody. This is your host, Gabe, and welcome to Casual Coffee Talk, where ideas, insights, stories, and experience are collected and shared with you. I'd like to kick off this episode with a question to the audience. Can you guess what I'm thinking right now? I'll give you 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. And you guys guessed right. I think we're going to have a great episode today. So if you guys tried guessing today's topic, believe it or not, it's not mind reading, but something very close to it. Psychology. And with me on today's show, I have a relative of mine who's a professional psychologist who's here to answer some questions about psychology and what it's like to own and operate a clinic. So let me introduce Dr. Caroline Salvador Moses. Welcome to the show, Caroline.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Perfect. I'm glad you're here too. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how long have you been a psychologist for?
So I've been a practicing clinical psychologist for approximately 20 years.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a long time. 2 decades. Wow.
Yes.
So if anyone's a professional, we had it.
Yes, it was a long road, but it's totally worth it.
Very cool. Very cool. So before we actually delve in a little bit further in depth, for our listeners, what is psychology and why is it important?
So basically, psychology can be defined as the scientific study of the human mind and its functions, including those that affect behavior. Mm-hmm. And it's important because it deals with the study of mental processes and behaviors at the same time. Mm-hmm. And basically, all human beings have mind and behavior.
Yes,
so it's definitely affecting each person.
Mm-hmm. I see. So kind of like the study of how people behave and why they think a certain way. Do I have kind of in the ballpark there?
Exactly, yes. Yep, that's you hit it right there.
Very cool. So as a psychologist, 20 years as a doing this, that's definitely, as I mentioned before, a really long time. How did you get started and what about it interested you?
Well, basically, coming from a typical Asian family, as you're familiar, and being the firstborn, mm-hmm. my parents really had high aspirations for me. Mm-hmm. And since I was born, they talked to me about becoming a doctor when I grew up. Yes, so when I went to college and I went to UC San Diego, I actually went in as a pre-med major.
Okay.
Yeah.
Going toward the nursing field or something, huh?
No, I was gonna, it was gonna be, I was a biology major, which mm-hmm. would prepare me to become, to get into the pre-med studies, mm-hmm. which would then open up doors to go to medical school. So that was the track that I was in.
Wow.
Yeah, but then when I started taking classes, I didn't enjoy the classes.
It's important to like what you do.
It's very important. And I found out that I wasn't interested in studying anatomy mm-hmm. or the physical being. Mm-hmm. And so I was kind of feeling somewhat discouraged because this is what I was raised to become. Mm-hmm. But yet, I found out that I realized that it wasn't for me.
Yeah. Got it.
And then I started kind of doing some research and mm-hmm. talking to some classmates about other fields of studies. And I realized that I was more interested in studying the human mind and behavior rather than the physical body.
It's a whole other thing. Yeah, definitely. Very important.
Exactly, which was what brought me to psychology. Mm-hmm. And so I started taking some classes on the side, aside from my biology major, and really enjoyed them.
Got it. So it piqued your interest kind of finding out what makes people tick, too.
Exactly, what makes people tick and why, there's people who are not within the norm in terms of behavior. Mm-hmm. And the way they interact with others or the way they view the world. So that was very fascinating to me.
Wow, very, very cool. Yeah, that's honestly, it's fascinating to me too. I mean, hence that's why I have these interviews.
Exactly.
Why people are doing what they do.
You get to learn about people's mindset and what makes them tick. And so basically I switched to psychology, and I found out that I can still become a doctor, but a different type of doctor, a doctor of the mind.
Yes.
And I started to do internships and also look for part-time jobs that were in a related field.
Okay. Very cool, very cool. I know on that note, I'm just wondering, for jobs as a psychologist, I know the stereotypical view of psychologists, at least what I'm thinking, and I'm pretty sure a lot of other people are thinking, we just imagine, people in a room with another person lying down on a reclined seat in a psychiatric ward, just kind of saying, tell me about your mother. Or what your childhood was like. I know there's so many other applications of psychology in other fields, like business marketing, health and wellness, and medical, but from what you've seen as a professional, what other types of jobs are available for psychologists?
Yeah, and so basically, I've done most of the things that a psychologist can do. And it does, the stereotypical aspect of it is someone, more the Freudian traditional type of providing therapy, where somebody lies or sits on the couch and you listen to them, and then you provide them feedback and you empathize and you go over ways that they can change their behavior and their mindset. But it's a very broad category. For myself, I've worked in inpatient psychiatric hospitals. I've worked in outpatient clinics. I've built a mental health program from the ground up. I've supervised teams of, other psychologists and clinicians. And these days I do a variety of things. I'm actually sitting here in my office where I do have a couch, but that's not what I do all day. My work takes me out of the office, because sometimes I would go to jails or juvenile detention facilities. These days, with a lot of immigration work available for psychologists, I also go to ICE to do some asylum evaluations. And so I'm pretty much all over the place. And so I'm not just confined in my little office with a couch.
So there are a lot more jobs out there aside from just interviewing patients on a couch in an office.
Exactly.
You mentioned that stuff happening too.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned the marketing and business field. There's actually, when I was in my doctoral program, I also took courses in organizational psychology. And so these are the types of psychologists who go out there to corporations and job sites and work with personnel in various aspects, such as improving leadership skills, improving interpersonal communication among the employees, learning about emotional intelligence and how that applies to their work. You can use psychology in advertising. Yes, so definitely a variety of employment opportunities.
Oh, wow. Very cool, very cool. You said social intelligence, right?
Emotional.
Oh, emotional intelligence.
Yes.
Got it. And emotional intelligence, I've heard that term, which I've thrown around a couple of times, but what exactly is that?
So basically there's regular intelligence, what we think of somebody's IQ.
Yeah.
And that's more, knowing about the fundamentals of academic.
Uh-oh, are you still there?
Yes.
Okay, I think you broke up a little bit.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah,
no problem.
Yeah. And so emotional intelligence, it's something that was, developed not too long ago. And it's basically the aspect of a human being where you understand people's emotions, and you can use that in order to be more effective in interacting with others and communicating with them. So it's being able to put yourself in another person's situation and understand what emotions tick.
I see.
So how you can relate to them in that level.
Wow. So it's almost like putting yourself in the other person's shoes to get their perspective of things.
Exactly. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That's
And it's very
cool.
useful in the work environment and anywhere, that you use interpersonal communication with, in your family relations, in your intimate relations, friendships.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah, definitely. I can imagine a lot of work that involves a lot of social work would definitely come in handy with being able to put yourself in another person's shoes.
Exactly.
Wow. So cool. There are other jobs.
Yes, there's lots of options. Yes.
Very cool. So for yourself, how did you actually just, I guess, start owning your own clinic? What's the typical workday look like for you as a psychologist?
Yeah, so, all the things that you mentioned, or even ones that I mentioned, I've done most of what a psychologist can do. And I started off when I was finishing up my doctoral degree. I did internships in community mental health clinics, inpatient psychiatric hospitals.
Wow.
And so I worked for the Department of Public Health here in San Francisco, where I, saw people for psychotherapy, psychological testing. I supervised clinicians, and I directed programs.
Whoa.
And at the same time, I had a private practice because I always wanted to be, to work for myself.
Yeah,
and,
of course.
Yeah, be able to pick and choose the type of clinical work I wanted to do.
Ah, very cool.
Yeah, and so after some time with Department of Public Health, I believe I was there for about 10 years, I decided to just go on my own and just do a full-time private practice.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah, I was ready, and so I opened these clinics. And there's 3 locations in the Bay Area right now. But the main one is in San Francisco, only a 5-minute drive from my home. And so I spend most of my time here, and then I go to the other clinics. And I also contract with other psychologists and medical doctors to do work at the other clinics.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dang. I mean, so you just kind of just went for it as far as going on your own too, it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. I took a leap of faith, and I mean, I was always, as I mentioned, I was always curious in the different aspects, and so I didn't confine myself to just one aspect of the work. Even as an intern, I did a variety of things, of tasks that a psychologist can do. And so that allowed me to gain skills in many areas, and also to be able to network with a variety of people, so that when I decided to go full-time on my own, I already had connections, I already had contracts set up. Yeah, so it wasn't like starting to build and taking a long time. I already had tons of jobs once I ventured on my own.
Dang. So I would say even just owning your own clinic, that takes some guts.
I believe so, but, to be able to move forward and, you have to follow your dreams and follow your instinct and just kind of go for it. And, I think being creative is also important, and having a variety of skills, helps, and knowing a ton of people. Yeah.
Wow, that is really, really cool. One of these days you gotta go and maybe we'll have an episode about what it's like to go and take a leap of faith like that. Because, man, there's not just with psychology and having your own clinic, but, a lot of people would love to go and open up their own businesses too. But that's definitely not easy. But, hey, that's a conversation for another day, right?
Yes, exactly. And I do have a lot of ideas on that because I am an entrepreneur also. So yeah. I think combining my clinical psychology background with my entrepreneur mindset really helped me to build these clinics and be able to expand.
Oh yeah, you're a force to be reckoned with.
Oh.
I hear you. Wow. So I know from hearing that, sounds like internships are really, crucial as far as building up those connections and learning as much as you can. Is that right?
Correct. Yes, I definitely agree with that.
Got it. And as far as even getting those internships, did you get them from, like through school or just other people you knew that were looking for interns? Or how did you actually get some of these intern jobs?
Yeah, so, as I mentioned, I went to UC San Diego. Mm-hmm. And at that point, when I was starting to become interested in psychology, I tried to get part-time paid jobs in a related field. Mm-hmm. And UC San Diego had its own daycare center.
Oh, wow.
And so I thought, okay, what better way to start than to work with children and families?
Okay, that sounds like a nice start.
Yes, very, very much so, because it opened up doors for me. So I worked part-time at the UCSD daycare center, mm-hmm. and I got to learn about child development. Mm-hmm. I got to learn about family dynamics and how the parents interact with the children. And so after I graduated with my bachelor's, I was ready to actually look for jobs that were more psychology related.
I see.
And that experience helped me, I started working at residential treatment programs mm-hmm. for emotionally disturbed children and mm-hmm. adolescents in the San Diego area. So I worked in various group homes. Wow. And residential facilities, and that job in the daycare was transferable. The experience I gained there was transferable to the work I did with, actual psychology-based work. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I still believe internships are very important, that I actually have an internship program in my clinics.
Ah, very cool.
Yeah, where I mentor interns who are in college and interested in getting into the field, either psychology, mm-hmm. counseling, or social work. And they intern voluntarily, and mm-hmm. then if they find that they actually are interested in the work, and most of them are in transition from college to graduate school.
Ah, wow.
Yeah, then I offer them a job after they get their bachelor's, and most of them take a gap year until they go to their graduate program, mm-hmm. so that they can earn internship hours and build some skills. Yes.
Wow, very cool, very cool. Well, you guys heard it.
There's
an internship opportunity, right, that we're listening to. Yeah, very cool. That is awesome. As far as the skills and the education and qualities that you feel are most important to be a psychologist, what would you say the most important would be?
Well, a lot of people think, okay, I want to become a psychologist because I want to help others.
Yeah.
But then, I think a person needs to consider whether, helping others in this manner would be best suited for them.
Yes.
Because it can get pretty emotional and intense.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So I've had interns who actually came in thinking they want to pursue the field of psychology, mm-hmm. and then they changed their minds because it just became too intense, mm-hmm. working with individuals who are suffering emotionally or have serious mental health disorders. So I think, people need to do some self-check, mm-hmm. and, like I said, do some internships to feel out whether this is a good match for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, because the way I'm kind of thinking, I mean, if you're going to be working with a lot of people with some, serious mental issues or problems, it could be really easy to just get sucked into it, right? And it might have an effect on your own personal mood, correct?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, you can take the work home, and then you can start being too empathic, to the point that it affects your own physical and emotional health. That you start to become depressed or anxious as well.
Oh. Yeah, wow, that's crazy. No, I can totally see something like that happening too.
Yes.
On that note, actually, how do you personally keep work at work, and your personal life and your feelings separate and unaffected for the most part? How do you do that?
Yes, so it's part when you do undergo the training program and you go to graduate school, whether or not to get your master's or your doctorate degree. Part of the training entails learning how to separate your own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, by stuff, I mean like your own issues or family background.
Your personal life, your personal things.
Exactly, yes. From your clients or your patients.
Uh-huh.
And so, for instance, throughout my training, when you're, before you become an actual psychologist and get your license, you have to go through supervised hours, clinical hours.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is meeting regularly with a supervisor or a group of supervisors where you go over your cases. And you're not just learning how to assess, diagnose, and treat your cases, but you're learning how to distinguish what your own feelings are versus what your client's feelings or issues are. Mm-hmm. And your supervisor is there to provide support and feedback as to how you can take care of yourself and be effective for your client, and not to get too enwrapped into their own personal issues, because you are still the professional in the case. Yes. So I would say through training and supervision, and then also just, your own personal work. Many graduate programs nowadays require someone to go through their own psychotherapy. Mm-hmm. So you go to a therapist yourself and learn about yourself and be able to, heal any underlying symptoms that you might have, whether it be family of origin issues, mm-hmm. or your own issues of depression or anxiety.
Yeah.
Yes. So all those things combined, I think, are what prepares somebody to be able to become an effective therapist, psychologist, even social worker.
Got it. And this kind of goes back to what you were saying before too, trying to be able to step out of your own shoes and see it from the perspective of another person, but really just being able to look at your own feelings from like almost like a detached standpoint too, huh?
Exactly. Yes, it's a balancing act, because you, as the clinician, you have to be engaged in order to help your clients engage, trust you, and be able to feel comfortable with you. But at the same time, you have to have this, professional detachment so that you can have a neutral stance and be able to, help analyze and interpret what they're going through, that's independent of your own judgment.
Wow.
So definitely a constant.
Wow.
Yeah, constant balancing act.
Yeah, it sounds like a balance game in your head almost.
Exactly. And even once you're licensed and been practicing for a long time, continuing to gain more education.
Yeah, more training.
We're all required. Yes, continuing education. We're required to have a certain number of hours, a certain number of classes every time we get relicensed. In psychologist cases, it's every 2 years. And so you become updated on the field of psychology, and you're still, learning about any new trends and new research. So the continuing education programs are very helpful in that regard as well, to keep you up to date about what's going on in the field.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. So you're always updated and on top of things.
Exactly, yes, that's the goal.
Very, very cool. As a professional, do you have any, I know that there's a lot of people who work in stressful work environments, whether it's like the food or service industry or any professional industries as well. There are a lot of people that do get stressed from work, and sometimes, unfortunately, they end up taking it home with them. So,
yes.
From your, I guess in your experience and what you've seen, do you have any tips for anyone to reduce that mental stress and keep work at work?
Oh, definitely. I know it's hard, and there's times that are harder or easier than others.
Definitely.
But, I think having a good, clear perspective on it, and just remembering that other aspects of your life are important, and work is not the only thing going on in your life. Family is important. Friends are important. Having a personal life and hobbies are important. And so always remembering that and keeping that in mind, as well as knowing that if you don't have a personal life or ways to de-stress, then you're not going to be an effective psychologist. You're not going to be an effective clinician, or whatever else field that you're in. You won't be effective in your work if you're not emotionally or mentally healthy in other aspects of your life.
Oh, okay. Got it. So definitely having just being healthy in the mind, as far as being happy and I guess emotionally stable and as much as you can be, that's crucial as far as just helping reduce that mental stress from work and I guess staying in control, right?
Exactly, and then finding ways that help you become emotionally and mentally healthy. So doing things that provide you peace and joy. For instance, meditation, or as we call it these days, mindfulness, being with nature, exercise, spending quality time with family and friends, having your own hobbies. For me personally, I love the mind and body work, doing yoga, mindfulness, yes, and spending a lot of time in nature, the beach, the mountains, spending time with my family and focusing on that rather than, thinking about work when I'm with them. So those are all very crucial in being effective at your work and as a well-balanced, well-functioning human being.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, because we all need to have something that brings us happiness. And healthy stuff too, especially like enjoying nature, what you said, putting yourself in the moment. That's good. That's really awesome. I know on that sense too, I know this is going to be a little bit more specific and in-depth, but I know that lately, maybe it's been like this for a while now, but when I go on let's say my Facebook or something, I know there's a lot of people that have talked about depression, and it seemed like to me, I was like, oh wow, are people just getting more sadder and sadder, or is like depression, is it really a big deal? And it's kind of interesting because I actually did a little bit of research myself about whether or not that was actually a thing. And well, according to what my findings, I know that WebMD, Psychology Today, they actually reported that there's been a sharp increase in depression, especially in teens and millennials. Teen suicide rates have risen significantly. A number of people have been hospitalized due to suicidal thoughts, and self-harm has actually doubled when you compare 2008 and 2015. And then even more so, 50% more teens, according to an NSDUH National Screen Study, a lot of teens actually demonstrated clinically diagnosable depression. And the interesting thing, even more so, though not proving causation, a lot of studies have shown that depression is actually strongly correlated with the growing use of social media like Facebook or Instagram or Twitter and the use of smartphones. And there's actually a declining amount of in-person quality time with family and friends. So, kind of connecting with what you said before on how to keep yourself, like I guess mentally healthy, and that it's good to have hobbies and things like that. Bottom line though, even though there's, I guess people are trying to go and, I guess, fix the situation, depression is still a serious and growing mental health issue from what I've seen. And I was wondering if you had any immediate thoughts or opinions on this that you'd like to share?
Sure. Wow, that's a lot of research you've done.
Well, I didn't want to just say, hey, you know what? I think people are depressed, and I just think they need to grow a tough skin. No. That'd be ridiculous.
It's easier said than done, right? Yeah.
No, and hey, I'm talking to a professional here, so I got to do some research and a little bit of work myself.
Yeah. No, those are some good statistics you quoted, and you mentioned teen suicide rate and social media being possibly connected to that.
Yeah, it's kind of scary almost, just because so many people, everybody that I know actually has, some sort of form of social media. And then when you look at depression and how I can't think of any, high schoolers or any young person that does not have a smartphone. So,
that's
and then
true.
When you start reading on, that, wow, people are actually getting depressed by something that they use and they have, and they look at every day. It's like, oh no.
Yes, yeah, I mean, it's catch-22, social media is the sign of the times, and it's really opened up some doors. I mean, there's just a lot more it's an easy way to connect with people and to connect more frequently, but at the same time, as you said, it's not really that in-person human connection. And then there's other things that people actually get affected by. As far as teens, there's been a rise in cyberbullying, and I know in the news that's been some teen suicides have been attributed to cyberbullying.
Yes, I have heard of that, yes.
Yes, and there's also, when you're looking at Instagram photos and selfies and people doing, posting photos that look like they're perfect, or, I mean, it's easy access for teens with, low self-esteem to compare themselves with other.
Wow.
And really affects someone's self-esteem and self-confidence, and which contributes to depression. It's an easy way to to feel badly about yourself if you don't have the perfect clothes or the type of hair that somebody has, and so it's right there in front of you. And I think that with cyberbullying, and also I think there's been teens, or in the realm that I'd worked with, when people post about suicide, or their own suicide attempts, and then another person sees that, they may think, oh, okay, that's the way I can end it all too. So there's just some copying as well of what they see in the media.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's been, I think that's part of the connection there, the rise in teen depression and suicide.
Yeah. Definitely, I can see what you mentioned before, just kind of comparing, yourselves to people when they have, they're perceiving someone with a perfect life. Boy.
Yes.
That's a tough situation there, especially if you're, just for young people, especially when, they're just becoming adults. Wow.
Exactly. And, there's been articles written on this, that there's people who seem to have a perfect life the way they project that on social media, but in fact, it's not really all that perfect. But many teens may not have that perspective. I think it's part of that developmental stage where you think you're getting what you see, basically.
And they might not have that life experience either.
Exactly. Yep. And so it's important to educate teens about social media, and also for parents to be able to, talk to their children about this, and to limit the use of electronics and access to social media, and also role model for their teens and children. Yes.
Okay. That's very good. So that would be, just some of the many ways that, or, some of the many ideas and suggestions that we as a society could actually help and fix the situation, right? Just kind of, I guess, increasing that awareness.
Yes, definitely increasing awareness, providing education about mental health and importance in taking care of mental health.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, in schools at a certain grade, I think it's around grade 5 or grade 6, schools provide sex education.
Yes.
Teaching children about their developing bodies.
Yes.
I think, a good way to promote mental health awareness is to also introduce mental health education.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea, especially since we do live in a different world. A whole other different world than it was 15, 20 years ago, where, hey, the internet wasn't exactly, not everyone had Facebooks back then. And social media wasn't nearly as prominent as it is now.
Yeah, and the other thing is, with the advent of social media, children or teens are not as protected from negative events occurring in the world, like the school shootings or terrorism. And so they're more exposed to it. These types of information are more readily available to them, even though they're not at a development level where they can absorb and understand it or put it into perspective. And so that can promote depression too, the fact that they just open social media and they learn about yet another school shooting. So
that's definitely scary for them too.
Exactly, which adds to depression and anxiety. So it's not just the cyberbullying or the comparing yourself to another person who may appear on social media as if they have a perfect life, but also the accessibility of, I would say, the negative news about negative events happening all over the world, and they get overwhelmed with so much negativity that it can contribute to depression.
Yeah, wow. I didn't really think, I thought of it a little bit, but yeah, you nailed it on the head. Wow. It's definitely eye-opening. They should have more education on that, definitely. I see that as being a very good solution as far as not to cure the problem, but preventing the problem.
Prevention, definitely prevention is key.
Yeah, wow.
And being able to reach out to someone if they're showing signs that they're depressed. So kind of, getting the help right at the initial stages before before it turns into a crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah, and I know that there's a lot of hotlines too, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes, a number of them. I was actually on the board of directors for the San Francisco Suicide Prevention.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's a free hotline, and you don't have to be suicidal to call and take advantage of their services. It's just called the suicide hotline, but really it's a suicide and crisis hotline. So if you feel that you might be in a personal or emotional crisis, then it's a good place to call and be able to go over some of what you're feeling and going through with somebody, and they can offer you some helpful feedback or resources.
And kind of give you that perspective and the feedback to help fix the problem and recognize it.
Exactly.
Okay, very cool. Very neat. That is great.
And the other thing I wanted to say about the hotline is that the trained professionals who answer the calls, they will be able to detect if somebody needs a higher level of intervention at that point. If somebody's feeling immediately, suicidal, and they have a serious ideation or any intent or a means to do it, they would be able to contact the appropriate authorities or caregiver to be able to intervene before somebody, tries to take their life or harm themselves or another person.
Very cool. So they would be able to definitely get you the help you need.
Exactly.
That's great. That is great. So that sounds, that's really, really neat that you're able to provide all that help. That's awesome. Then that's what a psychologist does.
That's right. Yes.
Helping people. That's great. So I know, just wrapping up, what's your best piece of advice for anyone who wants to be a psychologist?
Well, so I think I mentioned earlier that maybe, give it some time, think through it to see whether it's really something that you're interested in doing. Get some exposure and education about it. Talk to someone who's in the field or who's familiar with the field, because a person may want to be in a helping field, but it may not be the psychology realm. You know what I mean? There's lots of other venues, because you will be working with a lot of, intense emotions and conditions, that to some people may be scary. And so it's important to gain knowledge and exposure to it before you decide that this is the field you want to go into. Maybe, sign up for some internship or volunteer work. And then once you do figure out that you're, excited and interested in the field, then, if you're at the high school level looking into majoring in psychology in college, then, look at a program that is best suited to you. You don't have to major in psychology. You can major in a related field, like counseling or social work, social studies, sociology. But definitely take classes that are geared towards abnormal psychology if you're interested in becoming a psychotherapist or a psychologist in the future. Yeah, so those would be the first two steps. And again, gaining exposure. And there's more available out there than people might think. Some of the interns that have worked with me, I've met at coffee shops or at the gym.
Just everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, at events. And they're saying, oh, wow, you're a psychologist. At my eye doctor, she's like, oh, wow, you're a psychologist. I was a psych major, but now I'm working in an eye doctor's office because I don't know how to break into the field.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So really, just finding out more and how you can intern in a related field and gain the exposure, because if you do plan on going to graduate school to pursue your doctorate or your master's and get licensed, the schools are going to look at your internship experience, volunteer or even paid internship experience.
Yeah, they want to see what you've done.
Exactly, and not just, coursework, but they want to be able to see that you've done or been exposed to some actual encounters, direct client encounters.
Very good. That is good advice. And then it just comes back to internships, because, hey, you know what? If you're not in the field just yet, that is a great way to break yourself in. And we got confirmation. You just confirmed it.
Yes. Yeah. And again, I provide the example that I started off in a child care center on campus. So there's no the word psychology is not even part of that. But being able to, any setting where you can work with people and be able to learn about behavior in people's minds, and if it's transferable to the psychology field, then by all means, that would be a good start.
Great advice. That is great. Perfect. Bonus question.
Yes.
What do you like to do in your free time?
Oh, wow. I think we'll need another hour or two for this. Well, let me.
I know you like to do a lot, but
yes, yeah.
But what's your favorite thing to do in your free time?
I think I mentioned earlier, I do like yoga. I like nature walks, and I like to bring my family along when I'm going on nature or beach walks, bicycling. I love spending time with friends, and that can be therapeutic in itself. You know, it kind of removes you from the stress of work.
Yeah.
And, you know, be able to enjoy spending time with friends. And we like to go to concerts, music, you know, music fests, street festivals, wine tasting.
Ooh.
Yeah, just as an example, this past weekend I went with some girlfriends to free concert at the Golden Gate Park called Hardly Strictly Bluegrass. And it's a 3-day free festival with like, you know, 50 bands or something like
really
that.
Cool.
Yes, yeah, and it's completely free. And then another day we went to a San Francisco street food festival where you get to sample different street foods from various countries.
Ah.
So I'm a foodie, I love nature, yoga. So yeah, all those things.
Woo.
Just to start off on a few.
Hey, it's good to have a lot of things that you like. It just makes you enjoy life and appreciate it even more, right?
Exactly, especially with the intense type of work that I do and the intensive clientele that I work with.
Yeah.
It's important to have some me time and a lot of self-care time.
Yeah, that's great. That's fantastic. All right, so you know what? That is actually all of the questions that I have on my side. In the video description, I'm going to have some links just in case anyone needs them. But do you have any last final thoughts or anything that you'd like to say to our listeners?
Yeah, you know, I want to share with people that it's definitely a great field to get into. You know, I love it. I believe that I made the correct decision. And even though I thought my mind was set on one career, being in college and listening to my instinct that, you know, that the medical field wasn't right for me, that the psychology field was the right field for me to pursue. And since then, you know, I've been very personally and professionally satisfied with my chosen profession. So listen to your gut, and you know, talk to people, get yourself educated on the career that you're interested in.
Very good, very good. And that's how that's the secret to success and happiness.
Yes.
You heard it yourselves, you guys. All right, so that is the show. Again, this is your host, Gabe, and that was our episode of Casual Coffee Talk. We will see you guys on the next show. Thank you again, Doctor, for being on the show, and we will see you guys on the next episode. Take care.
Thank you, Gabe.